For a long time, Gojo being the strongest sorcerer was a no-brainer. No matter what anyone ever had to say about him, it was impossible not to acknowledge his superiority. But special grades aside, who is the strongest grade 1 sorcerer? Mei was certain that the title belonged to none other than Kusakabe. Nanami's answer was a bit more conservative since it could vary from situation to situation. But ultimately, he also believed Kusakabe deserved the distinction. He also received the same praise from Gojo himself. Although, Gojo had to admit that including the big 3 Jujutsu families might complicate things. Kusakabe, however, wasn't much of a believer in his own strength. He believed it had to be someone other than himself, although he couldn't seem to name anyone in particular. But even so, he mentioned someone by the name of Usami who is in the same boat as him. This is the very first mention of this character's name, and for him to say their name at the same time as his own implies that there is another grade 1 sorcerer on his level. We can also assume that Usami is someone he is close with. Otherwise, it could be considered a very disrespectful mention, and I don't get that feeling with this. Obviously, we don't know everything about Kusakabe's life story, but in terms of who he's closest with, we know that he does have a sister. One that became inconsolable to the point of becoming wheelchair-bound due to the death of her son, Takeru. But she was able to reunite with him somewhat thanks to Principal Yaga turning the boy into a fully independent, cursed corpse. And this gave her the strength to move again. Takeru's existence as an independent cursed corpse is strictly forbidden. Now that Principal Yaga is dead, Kusakabe and his sister are the only ones who know about this. Before leaving for the final time, Principal Yaga assured Takeru that even with him being gone, Master Tengen protects the forest where he and the other cursed dolls live. He also promised that Kusakabe's sister, Takeru's mother, would come to see him again. Well, this whole Tengen merger thing stands to compromise the protection of the forest, and I highly doubt that Kusakabe's sister will let her son's safety be in jeopardy like this without a fight. So I think we can expect her to enter the fray at some point. But before then, continuing her battle against Sukuna, Maki was running faster than any track star in history. She repelled one of Sukuna's attacks with her sword. As a result, a massive building was cleanly split in two. As Sukuna defended against her blade, he simultaneously kept her in place as the top half of the building came crashing down. The highway was struck by several thousand tons of weight. Maki leapt back as whole cars and debris fled through the air. And at her back, using a mid-motion car as cover, Sukuna prepared yet another deadly attack. But remember what Sukuna said before. Like Mahoraga, Maki can see through his technique better than anyone else. And that was enough for her to anticipate this move at the last second. The car was absolutely obliterated, and Maki was knocked into the side of another skyscraper. She managed to defend against the attack with her sword, but her body still broke through the building. And by the time she made it to the interior, Sukuna was already there, ready for a follow-up. The levels of speed being shown in this fight are insane. Sukuna caught her with a vicious cleave to the torso. This was all too similar to the punishment he repeatedly subjected Yuji to. Damage that our main character is still recovering from. But that's when Takuma showed up from behind to lend Maki a hand. In return, Sukuna greeted the hooded intruder like the pretty boy of a shoujo series. The second grade sorcerer was torn asunder, while Sukuna also cut the distance. The King of Curses delivered a hefty kick to his abdomen after that. Takuma spewed from beyond his mask. At the same time, Sukuna noticed something. Takuma plummeted from the window as a messy heap. Sukuna realized that the attacker wasn't holding the same cursed tool that he used before, as overhead, exactly one floor above, Kusakabe was preparing Nanami's weapon. Crashing through the ceiling, he attempted to ratio the king. But Sukuna's battle IQ is just way too high. He saw straight through the attack. He effortlessly knocked the sorcerer away in favor of a greater opponent. All of this provided Maki with enough time to re-enter the fight. She knocked Sukuna through a wall and moved swiftly enough to meet him on the other side. After messing with the environment a bit, Maki followed this up by hitting Sukuna into a pillar. And by the time he got back up, she had already dealt damage to the other ones around him. Maki knew that even if they can save Yuta, allowing this fight to go on any longer would be disastrous. She planned on crushing him immediately. It's then that we receive a recounting of Sukuna's previous opponents: Hajime Kashimo, Hiromi Higuruma, Yuta Okotsu, and Satoru Gojo. All of these men represented the pinnacle of sorcery and brought their absolute best to each attempt. But in the end, they were all just appetizers to Sukuna. The opponent that truly invoked his hunger was Maki. And this was on account of her heavenly restriction. The mere idea of it brought Sukuna maddening pleasure. Maki kicked one of the support beams. In a fraction of a second, several perfect blocks became displaced around Sukuna. And in the next fraction of a second, he was gone. He gripped Maki's face with horrific force. Then, he chucked her back out of the building. To Sukuna, because Maki had no curse energy at all, she was the real deal. She represents pure emptiness. Sukuna often speaks about and deals with aspects of the mind, body, and soul. In the case of Jujutsu sorcery, he considers that to be skin and flesh. Yet Maki is all marrow and bone. As he slammed onto the ground, he wondered if she understood what he was getting at. With pleasure, he informed her that her very existence is the denial of what it means to be a sorcerer. He was confident that the outcome of their clash would prove which of the two is worth developing, sorcery or the body. Maki realized that her opponent had halted his reverse curse technique. He wasn't healing anymore. Sukuna caught her blade just like he had before, but this time with even greater strength. She couldn't just flip him over. And in totality, this was a first-time experience for Sukuna. As he prepared a horrifying punch, he admitted that Maki is the only person to have ever forced a roll upon him. Then, Sukuna hit her with a Black Flash. This is huge! Sukuna has effectively evolved by fighting Maki. The need to represent Jujutsu sorcery pushed him to deliver its power to the utmost extent. Sukuna is now at least at 120% of his potential, which is even higher than we perceived it to be against Gojo since he's been holding back all this time. Sukuna is every bit as terrifying as we were all led to believe, and then some. Kusakabe appeared afterwards and was in disbelief. He couldn't believe that he was the last man standing. He wondered where the hell Yuji and Choso were. He thought about Mei showing up, but in the end, it was just him. He was even planning on running away once the opportunity presented itself. But having come as far as they have, he couldn't really afford to hit the dash. He had to wonder if this was truly happening to him. He put his hand on his weapon as the empowered king of curses looked up at him. It's the greatest sorcerer in history versus the best we've got left. But funny enough, I think Kusakabe is exactly who we want right now. Sukuna may be the king of curses, but Kusakabe is the king of stalling. When it comes to avoidance and delays, no one does it better than him. Kusakabe is very clever and really imaginative. He's also very well informed when it comes to ancient sorcery and the new shadow style. Jujutsu High's forces need time more than anything else right now. Furthermore, Kusakabe has always done his best to dodge opponents stronger than himself. He is painfully aware of just how strong special grades can be. But now that he has no choice but to face Sukuna, he might just surprise us and himself. And again, if all else fails, Usami could turn out to be his saving grace. Perhaps on his own, Kusakabe is just the strongest grade 1 sorcerer. But together, they're more like a collective special grade. I'm actually really looking forward to this fight. The way JJK throws mostly normal people into the most world-shattering events imaginable is one of my favorite things about it. Maki was highly praised, but in the end, my girl got washed in 2 chapters. She's definitely out of commission, but we don't see her anywhere after that Black Flash, so I think it's safe to say that she's still alive. And considering the amount of assistance she received, I feel like we have to put some more respect on Kashimo's name now. All I know is that when the anime gets to all this Shinjuku stuff, it will be weeks upon weeks of straight heat. But with that being said, the manga is on break next week. As always, I'm Celeste Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.